Hi, I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and tonight on EWTN Live, we are going to talk about the importance of Catholic radio with a couple of guests who don't even need a microphone to be heard. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to EWTN Live, where we bring you guests from around the world. Before we get to our guests, I want to mention that today is the feast of Blessed John Duns Scotus, a Franciscan who was born in 1266 and died in 1308. He became extremely important because he helped change the questions asked by theologians in regard to the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary. The question had once been posed, going back at least to St. Bernard, was the Blessed Mother immaculate before her conception? And he said no. Why? Because she didn't exist. When John Duns Scotus asked the question, reframed the question as, was she immaculate at her conception? Then I said, that changed the subject, and he came up with the reasoning that eventually led to the dogma being defined in 1854. Wow. Now, originally, today, we were going to have Bill Donahue of the Catholic League as our guest. However, his sister is very ill and may be close to death. So he is unable to make the trip. Now we want to keep him and his sister Tara and their whole family in our prayers. We ask you to please keep them in mind, and hopefully when things are possible, that he will be back, as I would love to have him as a guest, but he's got very important issues to take care of with his family, as all of us do. Now, we do have guests tonight, and there's certainly no strangers to our radio audience, because they do shows, nor are they strangers to our television audience, because they're on television as well, and they get into other media in their own little ways. They've always got something to say in defense of the Catholic faith, and in regards to the concern for people and their lives and everyday existence. One is the host of a radio show called The Doctor Is In. The other can be heard every Thursday on EWTN's Open Line program. So please welcome Dr. Ray Guarendi and Father Larry Richards. Dr. Ray.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hey, Father. Good to see you. Hey, it's good.
Notice we get water, he gets tea. You know,
I thought it was wine.
No.
No,
He's going to
no,
make
it's
it
just
wine,
tea.
though. It's going to tea turn to wine. That's what he's going to do. Miracle on TV.
It's so easy for you to be so envious.
Are you envious because we're generous?
No. No, I'm fine. I got tea.
He got tea.
Welcome. Because in addition to doing your own shows, because there's only so much of each other you can apparently take, you also work together on the television show that you broadcast from up in Cleveland. You do your programs in Cleveland. And Father Larry, you come from Erie, Pennsylvania.
No, he comes to Erie to do
he
my
has
part.
demands.
It's
He has
living
demands.
right with Father Richard. Yeah, what we're changing
We changed it to Living Mary with Father Larry.
That part is always done in my parish.
Okay, so you
Yes.
go over to his
They come
place.
up and we do 13 episodes in one sitting, just the two of us in the same room in the church in front of Jesus Christ. It is a great blessing.
Somebody has to keep an eye on you
I
too.
know, and Jesus is right behind us watching.
I know it. Well, that's good. Well, they're great shows because you both cover a wide variety of human issues that people are not hearing good sense about. There aren't many programs that give insight based on good sense.
Notice when he said good sense, he pointed to
I
me.
looked, I
He
noticed
pointed
that
to me. He was
specifically.
not pointing to
I
you
noticed,
for good sense.
Because you got money.
And apparently it's still limited, but it's good sense as such as it is. And it's something where the practicalities, especially of dealing with marriage and family, seem to be the strong suit of what you're doing. When and then you're doing the same on the radio. Well, you are on radio, and Father Larry, you also are dealing with evangelism on your program.
Yep.
How to communicate the gospel to other folks. When you look at this, what are some of the main family issues that you see needing to address?
Two of them have exploded in the
Yes.
last 10 years.
Yes.
One is adult young children who have left the faith. That is tormenting people everywhere.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And that's not only Catholic.
That's everywhere.
across.
That is across the board. The second one is 10 years ago, I did not have anywhere near the sexual confusion questions that I'm getting now. Now that is rampant among adolescents, and interestingly enough, oftentimes among young adults who then decide that they have a certain sexual attraction or orientation, and it's now just coming clear to them at age 24 or sometimes 35 in a marriage. Now, Father, one can say, well,
One
they
can
finally got to the point where they realized, but I think sometimes you have to ask another question.
Which is?
Are there social pressures and social components involved in this kind of confusion?
Yeah, that's certainly. Well, let me ask you this. I have my own thought, but do you think it's beneficial that these questions are being raised in the very early grades in school? Is that good for kids to have these questions raised at these early years?
Any developmental psychologist will tell you that there is a certain amount of confusion that is normal to the youth. Who am I? What am I? What is my attraction? And so therefore, it's like anything else. They used to tell you, you do an IQ test on a kid that's 3, it's going to be less reliable than doing an IQ test on a kid that's 7. I've done IQ tests on Father Larry, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty.
Because he felt insecure afterwards.
And you can extrapolate a parallel. You can essentially say, okay, a 3-year-old boy or a 5-year-old boy who says, gee, I am not a boy, I'm a girl. Well, some of that is pretty developmentally natural. But now the difference is our culture says, okay, run with that, as opposed to recognizing this could be part of just some developmental confusion that is relatively common.
In this confusion, or in this development where of telling people to run with it, why would there be such an interest by adults, especially from outside the family, say in the schools, etc.? Why would they have such an interest in trying to fix a 5-year-old's or a 7-year-old's state as, well, this is what you are? Why would that be going on?
Go ahead, Father.
I believe, like a lot of the problems with now, is since God isn't in society, he's not in schools, he's not in someone else, then you have people that want to play God. They take the place. There's this void that's been open. Instead of saying that you were created by God to be a male, you were created by God to be a female, now I have my degree. I got my doctorate in psychology, or whatever it happens to be. I think, well, you get to decide that, and you go with what you feel like today. And I think the biggest issues today, it's the same issue, but we go in and out of time. But the issue of our time is the God issue. That God is, like I just talked up in Cleveland with Dr. A couple weeks ago about the opioid epidemic and how many Cleveland's like ground zero for this. And people are saying, Father, why are so many people overdosing in that? And I said the same thing. 50 years ago, God was in the schools. You prayed in the schools, even the public schools. You read the Bible every day. Now he's nowhere. He's not in TV. And so when there's a void, people try to fill it with anything, whether it be drugs, whether it be their sexuality, whether it be whatever it is. And then if someone isn't God out there, well, I'll be God to you, and I'm going to tell you what you need to know.
Yeah. That's a line that's attributed to G.K. Chesterton, that when people lose their faith in God, they don't believe in nothing. They'll believe in anything. And that seems to be one of the things. I remember pointing out, it occurred to me when I was a novice back in 68, 69.
18.
That the 1919.
Oh, sorry.
And, the decision to remove prayer and the Bible from school had been done in 62. By that time, just within 6-7 years, it struck me, in the public schools in Chicago, they replaced the Bible with metal detectors at the door. Because there was so much of an increase of violence in the schools that had checked for weapons before walking in. Now it's gotten even more out of control. And so in terms of the violence in Chicago, this is highly problematic. And the other element too, and again, I'm sure both of you see this, the high level of familial instability, especially, more than half of all children are born to unmarried parents, and that does not make for a more stable child. It's one explanation for a lot of the problems that children have.
Father, there's an irony to all this. Much of the time, psychology starts out disagreeing with religious wisdom. Then over time, psychology comes to the conclusion that the God people had it right. For example, the instability of the family, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of psychological, sociological studies that essentially say a mom and a dad is the best way to pass on morals to a child. It's the best way. Not all family constellations are equal, which at one time that was becoming the reigning mindset.
Yep.
But as the research trickles in, gosh, those theologians might have been on to something. Those religious people might have known some truth that in our enlightened psychological sense, we were wrong about.
Yeah, it was a theory that people experiment with and become catastrophic. In some of the prison work I've done, 80 to 85% of the inmates are the children of unmarried parents. And it is no different for blacks, whites, or Hispanics. That makes no difference at all.
But our society says males are essentially, it's a preference. If you want to have a husband or a father with a child, it's one option. It's one option. Maybe not necessarily a preferential one, but among others, you should pick and choose from.
And certainly, even if you do choose, the male in the family has reduced civil rights in comparison to the female, as for instance, as to whether the child lives or not.
Who is most likely? Father, do you know who is most, let me rephrase this, who is least likely to abuse a child physically, sexually, perhaps emotionally, in a relationship. It's a husband, a father. Who is next more likely? A live-in boyfriend. Who is most likely? Serial live-in boyfriends.
Yep.
That research is beyond dispute.
Yep.
So a series of 5 guys coming into a home when a child is growing up dramatically increases the odds that that child's going to be hurt.
Yep. Emotionally, sexually, or
Absolutely.
physically,
No question.
or all the above.
No question.
Yep. So, these are questions that are now coming in, because I certainly hear them. You hear them
Sure,
in
as
the
a pastor.
in the parish.
Absolutely.
And you teach school anymore?
Not anymore.
But
They threw me out. They
yeah,
said, get him
well,
rid of these kids. Yeah, absolutely.
But
It's too mean.
I
But
saw
it
the
would.
petition.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is a reality, and there are circles where if you say these things, might even be some people here who belong to those circles, it is so objectionable to point these facts out. But it's not my personal feeling. It's
It's counter to the way I want to live.
I know.
You can't confuse me with facts, reality, and research if it goes against the way I want to live.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
And there's an attitude. One of the things that strikes me is in the politically correct part of our society, the relationship to these sociological and sometimes medical facts are so uncomfortable that it makes the relationship between Galileo and Pope Urban VIII look good.
Yeah, there you go.
Politically-
Would you explain the two
I have
different
no
people?
idea. I heard of the one guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have to make that simpler. Yeah. Galileo?
Galileo was an outside linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, 1960s. Oh yeah, went all the way
See
to
what
the
I got
playoffs.
to deal with? You
Yeah.
see?
Bless your heart.
I know.
But that is one of the problems. The politically correct, filters out this important information. This is what we are trying to do in this apostolate.
Absolutely. I think
Get this. These are data that I've known medical doctors when I bring up, in lectures. Never forget, happened in Baton Rouge and elsewhere. When I bring up how the promiscuity among people today has led to a pandemic of sexually transmitted diseases. It's
Indisputable.
20% of the whole population, virtually 100% of the homosexual population have the infections, and that there were 2 diseases when I was in high school, and now it's over 60 and increasing constantly. They said there were 20 strains of chlamydia on one college campus in Arizona. And a doctor came up to me after I was talking about something and said, thank you for saying that, because if I say it, I could lose my medical license.
And I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that there is a certain professional ideology that you have to adhere to, because even if you speak out against the reigning mindset, and what people don't understand is that we were talking about diagnoses. You said, why would someone tell a 5-year-old what would be the stake that I as an adult would have to tell a 5-year-old?
Yes.
Diagnosis is not just simply a matter of medical judgment. There's a social component to it. And diagnoses oftentimes have a social lifespan. In the 80s, ADHD made the scene, and it became very pronounced, along with, remember agoraphobia?
Yes.
Agoraphobia was the first thing to come on the
Explain what
scene.
that means.
Yeah, please, doctor.
Oh, so you made fun of me when I didn't know Pope Urban. You don't know agoraphobia.
I don't.
It's a fear of agora. That's right. It's a Greek term. It means fear of the marketplace. Essentially what it means is a broad-based social anxiety.
And it's agora, but go ahead.
Yeah. See, don't say those things in front of a Jesuit.
I'm not saying nothing.
Yes, that'd be the thing.
But yeah, it's the fear of being with other people.
Yes, it's
and
the
that was a fad.
fear of open spaces. Yeah, oh, well, sure, the women's magazines jumped all over that. Then, now lately, in the last maybe 10 years, bipolar. Bipolar diagnosis has become a very dominant diagnosis. Then, autistic spectrum disorder. Now, I'm not saying these disorders don't exist, but I'm saying there is oftentimes a social awareness, a social push. In the adoption world, reactive attachment disorder. Okay, these things become very high profile, and pretty soon they are seen much more commonly than maybe is warranted. Example, Harvard did a study, and they said, and according to their criteria, bipolar disorder was diagnosed approximately 50% of the time when it was not the proper diagnosis.
It's this, and sometimes it strikes me, and I'm in my field, and I think, and I saw this in other fields too, that there are certain fads that go on where people are trying to get dissertations written and papers for their own tenure at the universities, and they focus on certain problems and neglect others and neglect other data that is relevant to the situation.
We used to say in therapy, you will see what you're looking for. They did a fascinating study once, and they found that therapists made a diagnosis of the client within the first 4 minutes of the interview, and any evidence after that was either ignored if it was counter to the initial diagnosis, or was taken in much more willingly if it supported the initial diagnosis. So you find what you're looking for.
Or as we used to say in class, quid recipitur secundum
said
recipientis.
I said that all the time in class, didn't you?
Told you he's a Jesuit.
Yeah, something about quid
Exactly.
octopuses and squids.
Exactly.
I don't know what he's saying. He does this. He knows
know.
like 97 languages, and then he says all these things in languages. Nobody knows what he's saying. He could be saying the sun's going to rise tomorrow because the moon is blue.
Yeah.
We don't know this.
It's only 10 phrases he knows. He's like a Jehovah's
That's what
Witness.
it
Just
is.
keeps doing the
He
same
knows-
thing again
I
and
said
again.
that.
That's what
He knows
says
about 10
exactly.
words in each
yeah,
language.
exactly. And so he keeps saying it. Yeah.
Just remember that a lot of them are very bad words. Mind yourself.
5 seconds, 5 seconds. Get there.
Multiple languages. We see this, and sometimes there's another agenda. Part of me, I want to understand people who are dealing with this transsexual, transgender kinds of issues, but all of a sudden, that's coming to a prominence. And there's something in the back of my city of Chicago, inner city mind saying they're up to something. And one of the things I sometimes wonder is this a way to encourage people to become neutered so they don't have babies? That one of the big sins of certain parts of our political left is having babies. You have folks all the way from people like there's a doctor of ethics at Princeton who wants Singer. He wants the population down to 5 million.
Is he going to be one of the 5 million?
Presumably. We haven't had a 5 million population in the planet, 5 million of human beings, since the Chalcolithic period.
Yeah, I remember
back
that.
around 5500 BC. And this is before Bronze Age. You know, who's going to make their latte? Who's going to grow their coffee? You know, they have, how are they going to get it? And then you also, or some people say 50 million.
Singer, but Father Singer is a preeminent ethicist at probably the highest profile university in the country.
Yeah.
This is not some guy that's out on the fringes somewhere.
No, no, no.
I know, that's what's frightening.
Exactly. And that this kind of, setting up the reduction of the population to a level that goes from before the Bronze Age is, it makes something like having children the mortal sin. That's the new mortal sin, and global warming is the new apocalyptic, and we have to reduce population. And the transsexual, movement, trying to make it into something bigger than it is, could just as well be a way to say, no, we want people to be neutered, because that's what happens with the surgeries. So this, there seems to be these agendas that come up and show up as well as in what scientists see.
Father, would you say that? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say when he talked about being neutered, he was looking at you.
Well, I'm sensitive.
But go ahead.
Would you say that as a culture, now I forgot my point because you threw me off on that thing, and it was a good
Because
point.
the truth hurts. Yeah.
A good point.
It was a great point. I really think that, that's part of why so often that we need to be bringing the light like we're doing now into the darkness. That because that's exactly what I was going to say.
What he said.
Yeah, he said exactly. But we need to keep speaking truth, because truth is always more powerful than this darkness. Even when these people, sometimes they get their way for a while. But as often I say that, Rome was trying to kill us, and they wanted us all dead. And it's St. Peter's now that sits on top of Rome. The emperor doesn't exist anymore. The God's always going to work. And I think that's why Catholic radio is so important, Catholic TV is so important, that we keep speaking this truth in this darkness. And we keep talking about the reason that people are loved, the reason that God created us. And when everything works this way, it falls into place. Yeah. And it brings great peace to people. And I just think that no matter how dark this darkness keeps getting, and it's growing, oh my gosh, all the stuff we've been going through in the last weeks, God's light and his love and his truth is so much stronger. And that we just got to make sure that we don't fall in this political correctness that we're afraid to say anything because we don't want to rock the boat. We need to love people so much that we speak this light again and again, and then it rings with people when they hear it, and it can be transformative, and it can be life-giving.
It's something that we've seen tragically this week again. This is, about the third time in the last couple months we've seen mass killing, whether it's with a rifle or a truck, and people's lives are, unjustly, taken from them. And then that's disturbing enough. But when you then see parts of the political left or cultural left criticize people who pray as they're trying to cope with that family who lost 8 members. And to tweet like one actor did, saying that, God did answer their prayers with bullets. Who says that to the grieving? Who says that? What kind of mentality? And we have to be a people that pray for him, as well as become in complete solidarity with the grieving, and then see what we can do to improve the situation to prevent these things. We want this all prevented, but we also are going to be at the same time in solidarity with their grief. St. Paul said in Romans, we read it yesterday, grieve with those who grieve and rejoice with those who rejoice. This is part of our task, as well as giving another vision for what's possible for life here. The people who are doing the killing are not doing this in the name of Christ.
My son said, when you have a radical follower of Islam, you get ISIS. When you have a radical follower of Christianity, you get Mother Teresa.
Exactly. Exactly. That Mother Teresa is a radical Catholic, and Osama bin Laden and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is the follower of radical Islam.
Bob, I understand a little bit the guy that says God answered their prayers with bullets. Because if there is no God, then you look at those people praying and you say they're delusional. They're trying to comfort themselves with some kind of cosmic therapy that doesn't exist. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty of solving the problem. Your prayers are useless because there's nobody up there hearing them. So in a warped sort of sense, I can kind of understand that. We're going back to what you were saying, Father. God knows reality. He created it. So that if you go against reality, you're going to lose. As you pointed out with the sexually transmitted diseases. God says, keep sexual relations in a marriage. Not because I'm trying to thwart your fun, but because I know how I made you. Well, no, God, you're thwarting my fun. I'm going to go do it this way. Okay, there's 60 diseases over here. And I think that's where we can really speak that kind of reality to folks.
And we got to be able to speak the hope in that darkness too, meaning that even that child that was killed, that child lives forever. That
exactly.
when the world puts a period, God puts a comma. And we got to keep speaking that there's still, these people are alive and see the face of God. And see what people get, and it's evil. Evil sits there and rebels against this hope that we can give the world. It goes crazy and it says, look at that. It's evil is all it is. It's evil, it's the screaming of evil against all the peace that can still come. And again, think about it. When Christ was dying on the cross, evil thought it won. It was the worst thing that could ever happen. See, here's the God. He said he's God, and see what happened? And when that happened, it was the most phenomenal, perfect, life-giving thing that anyone happened. When Jesus Christ died on the cross, he brought us salvation. Yeah. But the world screamed, and look it's over, it's evil, it's done. And that's the thing that we can speak this hope into anything that the world throws us.
Exactly. We have to take a little break. We're going to come back in a couple of minutes because we have a lot of folks here from the studio audience who are attending our radio conference. And we also want to get your questions and comments, so please stay with us. Thank you very much. It's great to have both of you here with us on the show. And you're going to be here for the whole radio conference, correct?
We are emceeing it.
Yes, see? So
together. It's the greatest thing
we
ever.
make a great team. I'm the brains and I'm the brawn.
And I'm the heart.
If you want information about attending the 18th annual EWTN Catholic Radio Conference, I have no idea what's wrong with you. But it is the other people are very nice. These two.
Nice. Yeah.
But the 18th annual EWTN Radio Conference is November 8th to the 10th. It'll be at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Birmingham, Alabama. And if you still want to come, go on the website, EWTNCatholicRadioConference.com, EWTN catholicradioconference.com, or you can call 205-795-5751. And they still have room for you to come to the conference. That would be a great thing. All right, let's start off with a question from our studio audience.
Wow.
Ma'am, where are you from?
Hays, Kansas.
Hey, oh, sure, I've been to Hayes.
Yes, you have.
I spoke at your radio conference.
Yes, you have. So it's Dr.
One of your
Ray.
fundraisers. That was fun.
You never asked
I
me.
enjoyed that.
I have asked you.
Oh, sorry. He has so much more time than I do.
We're probably not quite big enough.
So-
Larry.
So what is your question?
Well, Dr. Ray was saying that, there's these diagnoses that are, a fad, so to speak, such as autism or bipolar, and those are treatable with mind-altering drugs. So could that be part of the problem of people going crazy and angry and, doing these mass killings? I just was curious.
Let me
Yes,
qualify
Dr. Ray.
that. I didn't say they're fads per se. I'm saying there's a social component to some of them. They get a higher profile. When I was in graduate school, they basically said that folks with a diagnosable serious mental disorder, the psychotic types, had a lower crime rate than the general population. By and large, that was true. What you're seeing now is in some of these mass killings, mental disorder is in fact becoming a component. And I think that is because, as Father said earlier, we kick God out. All of a sudden we become a little more angry society, and that kind of anger then is incorporated into somebody who's not thinking real well up here. Regarding the drugs in and of themselves are not necessarily going to cause this kind of stuff. It is more likely that a person with that kind of mental struggle is going to get some kind of drug, which is just part and parcel of an attempt to treat it.
And there may be times when, and we've seen this. I remember back in about it was the late 70s. Jimmy Carter was president, and he and his administration were convinced by some folks in the state governments and in the psychological community to empty out the mental asylums.
I was part of that. They told me. They said, no, seriously. No, I don't mean it that way. I was told, I was in those institutions, and we were told, we have the medication, we have the case managers, we have the social supports. We do not institutionalize these folks for any length of time, even though they had no place else to go. And so what tended to happen? The homeless population exploded.
Yep.
Group homes exploded. And then more people were essentially sent to skilled care nursing homes.
And one other factor, because again, this is from talking to prison wardens, they end up taking care of them. Because a lot of people with mental disabilities end up doing various crimes, partly because they can't cope with the outside world, and it's a safer world for them, ironically, in prison. That's another area. So they end up institutionalized for various criminal behaviors, as well as some of these other places. And we really may have to rethink that, how we're dealing with that. Once again, it was the Catholic Church that invented the mental asylum at St. Dymphna's shrine.
Bedlam came from Bethlehem, remember?
Yep.
I knew something he didn't know.
I'm sure he knew.
He knew it.
He was acting dumb for you.
Okay.
Made you feel good. Wasn't that hard?
Let's go to a phone call. We have Anastasia on the line. Hello, Anastasia.
Hi, Father Mitch.
Hi, where are you
Dr.
calling
Ray, Father
from?
Larry, Ohio.
Great.
Good
And your
place.
question?
Well, I heard on one of your programs, this has been a while back, on heroic virtue, when you had those two young people talking about different issues. They mentioned that John Hopkins used to do the gender change operations way back, and that when they followed these people through, they found out that it did not correct their problem, that actually made it worse. And they were highly suicidal, so they completely, totally stopped doing those operations. And I'm wondering why that information hasn't filtered out to the other scientific community. This was not a faith-based organization
Right.
by any means.
That's right.
And the second part of that question is, could they be forced down the line to start doing these operations again because they're by some kind of mandate? I thought maybe Dr. Ray would know something about that.
From what I am aware, they are reconsidering that. Okay. Dr. Paul, I believe his name is McHugh,
Yes.
was the chief psychiatrist, the director of psychiatry there. And what they found was that after sex reassignment surgery, the percentage of suicides was much higher. The ratio of suicide was much higher. They found that the diagnosable conditions also were higher. And so they determined that this, in fact, was, for many of the people they did these assignment surgeries on, not an answer. So they discontinued them.
In fact, it seems to have caused certain other problems. They were trying to solve one kind of problem, and then it evoked other difficulties.
Actual sexual anatomical confusion is a relatively rare condition. The sense of I am a male in a female body or I am a female in a male body is something that is gaining momentum, cultural currency for us. But in terms of something anatomically incorrect or a confusion at the very biochemical level in the cellular structure, most of those cases not there.
Yeah. And there's something that strikes me as odd. I mean, all three of us have spoken with lots of married couples, and I have not come across married people who say, oh yes, I fully understand as a man what my wife is thinking.
You better watch yourself.
Nor do the wives fully understand what their husbands are thinking.
You were in the corner, but you got out of that.
Yeah, there you go.
I've been in lots of rodeos. What it points to is that there's a certain mysterious quality about the other gender that you don't really know what it feels like to be a woman. I don't understand what it's like to be a woman, and a woman doesn't understand what it's like to be a man. We can communicate and talk about a lot of things, but it's not the same as having that experience. And I oftentimes wonder, is this more a set of circumstances by which people feel uncomfortable with their identity rather than knowing that they are comfortable with the identity of the other gender? That's an important distinction.
That's a tough
I was just going to say, you take that.
I'll do scissors.
I'll
do scissors, paper, rock.
You lost.
One of the things I see in my clinical experience is that oftentimes when people say, I am a biological man, but I feel like a woman, it is predicated upon their attraction, their sexual attraction. So that if in fact I am sexually attracted to the same sex, then sometimes I interpret that as, well, therefore,
I feel like a woman.
That aspect of me, that very powerful aspect of me. So I see that. The other thing is, you're absolutely right. There is this debate. What is it to feel like a man or to feel like a woman? How do you define that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And, you know, I have 10 kids, and some of my children are less prototypically masculine than others. Okay, so would you say they don't feel like a man, or no, they just happen to be more sensitive or more communicative, or they have certain personality traits that are more common across the board among women? Okay, does that mean they're not a man? No, they just have certain qualities. I'm very sensitive, and I kind of communicate.
Very sensitive, let me tell you.
But
That hurts.
Yeah, I see. Don't cry again on television. It'll be bad.
But it's ignoring that there is a spectrum of the way men react and a spectrum of the way women react. But there still is a feminine quality that is not limited by only one set of behaviors. You know, there are, you know, life is more interesting and complicated, and that's fine. But to say, okay, no, you've jumped over, and so you're on the, that seems controlling to me. Let's take another question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
I am from North Texas, and I'm with Guadalupe Radio Network. I'm here with the Catholic Radio Conference this week.
All right, good to have you.
And enjoying the show very much, and I wanted to play off your earlier comment, Father Mitch, about population control and Peter Singer, and you had talked about the kind of the end goal here is perhaps to control population. And I wanted to know your thoughts on how this kind of renewed push and emphasis on contraception may play into all of this, and how the Church's teaching on this, of course, is the truth, and how this kind of plays into the big picture, push for contraception.
And in my opinion, the way, from the very beginning, when Adam and Eve sinned, the first sin was the devil tempted Adam and Eve to be like God. You'll be like God. And what does it mean to be like God? You determine what's right. You determine what's wrong. So you're God. So what do people want to do today in contraception? I want to be God of my sexual act with my spouse. And being God in that way, that means I determine when life is given and when life is not. I will decide that. And again, everybody does it, not just with that. Like some people sit there and say, well, I think if I miss Mass on Sunday, it's not a sin. Well, then who are you? You're God, right? Whatever it is, you play God. And again, people come down to this God complex. But again, I think it's from the evil one that he always tempts us that you will be like God. And so from the beginning, we've always wanted to be like God, and that means we want to be the ones that determine what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a very good analysis. Let's take another phone call. We have John on the line. Hello, John.
Hello, Father Mitch.
How are you today?
Pretty good today.
Good. And your question?
I think the guests are very knowledgeable. This is a heart-to-heart question. I would like to know this. We have a society that people still erroneously lean against it for definition of their inner self, everything. But the problem is, these kids come home, and the way the economy is, there's a dad and a mom working and not in the house. And they have a severe lack of parenting. I would like to know if the church is aware of this. I'm sure she is. If Father Larry could tell us what they do, and Dr. Ray can give us a psychological evaluation and tell us lay people what to do, because I care. I really do.
Yeah.
All I know is I just won his radio voice.
See?
Who's mine? Oh, yeah.
His.
Oh, yeah. That's what I figured. Yeah.
Go ahead. I had the last tough question. You take this one.
Yeah. Again, my big thing is I always think that everything is a God issue. And so one of the biggest things for me is that when Jesus says, call no man father, he meant, the guy who was intimate with your mother and begot you, right? Mm-hmm. And so the true father of everyone is God. And so one of the first things we have to instill into our children is that they are beloved sons and daughters of God. And that's where their identity comes from. Their identity doesn't come from movies or TV or what the psychologists say. Their identity comes from God. And I think that if we teach kids, again, how to pray, and that's what I try to do at my parish, and they say, what should I teach my kid? And I says, the best thing you can teach your kid is that he was created by God to be loved. And that he has to know that his identity comes from being a beloved son or a beloved daughter of the Father. In Jesus, when he began his ministry, it all began in Mark chapter 1, verse 11, 1:1. You are my beloved son with whom I am well pleased. And I think when people, if we can get it to them when you're young to know that you are my beloved child with whom I am well pleased, we set them up in strength way before the world starts pulling them down and everything else with all the lies. So we got to instill that. It's what I do in my parish and what I teach and what I taught when I dealt with boys all the time. You got to know who you are and where your identity comes from. It comes from God.
Yeah. That's the key thing, but it's, the issue of then, kids' attention span can be fairly short, and you've got, so that on one hand they can be seeking their identity from God, but if they're not around their parents enough. This is a tension, and sometimes, you know, we have to keep in mind, sometimes both parents have to work
Sure.
to even have a house and food. It's not that they're saving up for a luxury summer home in some other place, but they're trying to make it. Wages have been flat for a number of years now. People who have been out of work, it's a difficult struggle. And kids sometimes are a little bit more on their own than I was. I mean, I came home, my mother was there, you know, that, and all the moms, and they're all watching us. That was norm. And they would tell our dads who were at work, that was norm. But you don't see that always to be the case, and kids are making a lot of dumb decisions on their own without supervision.
And I think that, I'm sure you'd think that, that's why I'm big on family dinners, that you do dinner together as a family. If you can't do it every night, you do it at least once a week. But I used to live with this one family. He was in the seminary, he's a priest too, Father Tim Kasecki, you know. For the I used to live with his family, and they used to have a rule in their family: nobody eats alone. And so when the oldest boy, if he'd be out working, doing the paperwork, and he didn't come home till 9 o'clock, well, everybody stopped watching television or any kind of game, and they all sat at the table with Dan, so that nobody ever ate alone. And I talk about that a lot, that in our society, people eat alone all the time. They put stuff in the microwave and they get there. Where comes the time when we say what's most important in this house is family? And it's somehow that even if we can't eat together because Dad's working, when he comes home, let's all get together and spend time with each other. I think that helps. I don't know if you can do that with 10
There's
kids.
even an island culture in the South Pacific where they will not eat at all for a couple days until there's other people there to eat with.
Wow.
That's how important that meal together is. They'll wait, you know, and so they do. Let's take another phone call. Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Father. It's wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just have a comment and a quick question. Even though I'm a senior citizen, I still fondly remember a time when I was, I think, around 10, that I went through a tomboy stage, and I've talked to many, many women who also feel the same. It's just a part, I think, of growing up. I think this happens before adolescence, before you go into the next stage. And but now there's people in authority. When girls reach this point, some of them are being told, "Oh, well, you were meant to be a boy," and that's quite sad. But then my question is, when people have the sex change operation, their DNA is still the same, the original, what they were born with. What significance is that going to have? And I'll hang up and listen to your answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's an exact, concrete way of expressing what you had said earlier, that the variations that go on and the indefined aspects of identity of childhood. Kids go through stages. You know, sometimes boys are having a lot of fun and girls want to play and do the same fun, goofy stuff that we do.
Saw a statistic that said with that kind of somewhat normal developmental fluidity, that through puberty, well over 90% of the kids return to their biological identity. Okay, so that's one factor. One of the points that she brought out was, well, okay, then do we do this to a 6-year-old? And sadly, this is happening, and I think the medical community's got to start debating this. Do you put these kind of hormones into a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, a prepubescent child? Do you do this kind of sex gender reassignment on the basis of a 7-year-old who says, we don't give that kind of authority to a 7-year-old for any other emotional issue? If a 15-year-old girl walks into my office, she's 5'2", and she weighs 74 pounds. She says, I look in the mirror, I see a fat person. I'm just fat. And I say to her, we'll handle this. We're going to get you on some diet pills, we're going to do stomach stapling, and we're going to get you down to 55. I'd be in serious trouble.
I would think.
But if that same woman walks into my office at age 15 and says, I'm a male, I can't even explore it with her. It's off limits.
Is that right?
Yeah.
See, this is not wisdom. It's politics. That's why I said that there's an agenda. They're up to something. And I have a suspicion that it's an issue of something way beyond what's good for the child. But I'm afraid this is a lot of fun, but we have to bring the show to a close. So, Father Larry, would you join me in giving a blessing to everybody?
Absolutely.
May Almighty God bless you and keep you and cause His face to shine upon you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And we can have programs by Father Larry and by Dr. Ray only because of your help. They don't have any money to do this. And if they did, they're such cheapskates, they wouldn't share it with us anyway. So
I'll give you a nickel.
we appreciate you making their programming possible, and my program and all the other shows we do, because you keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill. And see, it worked, folks. It worked.
$2.
God bless you all and keep you for your generosity. Thank you.